and welcome to another episode of Work 2.0, the podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Wells, and this is where we talk about AI, power, and the future of work. Today, you'll notice my setup is a little bit different, and that is because Work 2.0 is on the road. That's right. We are here today at Workhuman Forum London, and I'm here with KeyAnna Schmiedl. She is not your typical HR officer. She is, tell us your title.
Sure. I'm the Chief Human Experience Officer of Workhuman.
Brilliant. And so today we're here to talk about the future of the workforce, AI, and what human experience means within that context. So first of all, I'm really curious to hear from you. You know, with companies being under immense pressure right now, everyone wants to perform faster, catch up to date with AI. You know, I think there's a lot of pressure on leaders to be not just up to date, but really relevant and current with their workforce, to understand what's going on in their workforce where they're so far from that connection. What do you think are the human behaviors or leadership qualities that are most valuable in the midst of all of that pressure?
Yeah, I honestly think the human behaviors are exactly the right kind of capture for these things, right? It's the listening with compassion, it's the communication, it's the honesty, the humility, the transparency, all of those things that, you know, we talk about in theory now more than ever have to be active behaviors that are shown consistently throughout leadership in an organization in order for people to feel like they're talking to a person and not just an arm of the business who doesn't have their best intentions in mind.
Right. I feel like there's a lot of HR gets a bad rep in organizations. So I'm glad that you said that. People often say, you know, HR is not there to advance your interests, it's there to advance the company's interests. How do you approach it as a chief human experience officer?
Well, I think, you know, part of me wanting to embrace the title of Chief Human Experience Officer is I think all of us have had those situations either earlier in our career or a situation where we felt like, I'm not sure that HR or my manager or whomever is listening to me with the intention of helping me to figure this out. And for me, the idea of the human experience at work is a company is nothing without their humans, right? And so the experience that they're having tells you about what behaviors are actually being rewarded, which behaviors that you encourage are actually being actively thwarted, and what is really happening as like a touch point in your culture. So to me, it's this sense of you have to care about what's going on for the people and what the themes are, because even if as an organization you disagree that that's a problem, it's still up to you then to explain why there's a gap between that experience and what the expectations are.
That's really interesting. So it's a matter of active listening. As a leader, we have to do a lot of that, not just what we think the workforce needs, but actually what is it that they're saying and responding to that need, and being willing to challenge our assumptions if what we think is different to the reality. When it comes to human experience, obviously this is your title at Workhuman. Do you see this as something that's evolving in other organizations as well? And is that because of Workhuman?
I would love to give Workhuman all of the credit. I will say that I have noticed with a few of our clients, you hear things like the people experience team, right? It used to be a lot of culture in the title, and I think you still see that, but I think the people experience, human experience, whatever you want to call it, talent experience, is really just a further extension of, well, what do we mean by the culture? Who you have to talk about who is experiencing the culture, because then that also helps to shape it, right?
Right, for sure. So when you think about with AI changing the workplace culture, which is happening so rapidly globally, what worries you the most about when you look at, obviously when you started within HR, this was before AI became such a big deal. Now that you're seeing it happening in real time, what worries you the most about it?
Well, I would say the first thing that comes to mind that maybe isn't the first thing that I care about the most, but the first thing that comes to mind is how many people teams, talent teams, HR teams, whatever you want to call them, have outstanding tech and automation debt that now they have to quickly close the gap on and then get ahead of the organization on, right? So the underinvestment in the GA functions now is like coming to call in a lot of organizations. And so those teams are not only playing catch up in terms of the investment in the tools that they've always needed, the automation that they've always needed, but now they're being tasked with and ready the rest of the organization for this change. So I'm concerned about the people that take care of the people having enough time and bandwidth and permission to experiment, to understand, and then to be able to bring these holistic solutions. For organizations that are a bit further along, I'm concerned that we don't have honest, transparent conversations with the people. I think part of being an employee, of which I am, right? Is that one, you are in contract with your employer, and there's an expectation that you are delivering to them honestly, showing up every day, doing the work that you're supposed to, that you're then being compensated for. At the same time, there's an expectation that the organization is giving to you the tools and the resources that you need to be successful. And as part of the resources in order to be successful, that's information. And so just like anybody else, I want to know how AI is going to change my job, right? How do I understand if my job is going to exist in the future? These are all very valid questions. And by either not saying anything or obfuscating what the leadership team is thinking, it just does such a disservice to the trust and to that, not just employee-employer contract, but the cultural contract that you have in the organization, right? And so I think it's very important for us as leaders to tell people what we know and to tell people what we don't know. I think it's unfair to say in any organization, no job will be impacted. I think that is 100% false, right? Every job is going to be impacted. I'm in the tools all the time trying to figure out how it can do my job, right? And then what does that mean for me? And how then am I thinking about, well, then what does my job become? And everybody should have that opportunity. And then I think for leaders to share, here's how we're thinking about the impacts of this. It's going to change everybody's job. How much is that going to change your job? Let's figure it out together. But for the organizations that are building along with the people to understand it, I think it becomes more obvious to the individuals doing the day in, day out work, what those changes are. And then it's incumbent on me and my team to make sure that we're part of those conversations, we're seeing those things so that we can help shape what the future needs to look like.
I think one thing that you said, which is a theme that I'm seeing come up again and again in the conversations that I've been having on Work 2.0, is that whenever I've been speaking to CEOs and AI thinkers, they're saying it's all about trust, and like that's like the number one ingredient in an organization that glues everything together. Because when employees feel like they don't trust their leadership, there's lack of transparency. They're not understanding. Layoffs will happen, but if you're just laid off because you woke up one morning to your laptop not being able to sign you in, and then you find out in the news, oh, you've been laid off. There's that lack of trust. So that lack of transparency, that can even hinder innovation, because the remaining employees are looking at the employer like, okay, sideways, and they don't, that loyalty, that engagement isn't there because people are scared and afraid.
Well, and they're not going to want to innovate. They're just going to want to do what they need to do, right? Some people then go into this mindset of, let me stay under the radar, right? And so at that point, you're not winning at anything, right? Because the people are miserable. So then your culture is tanking. You're trying to excite them about innovation, but it's like you have to be in a place where you feel like all these other needs are met before you can get excited about something.
Absolutely, 100%. So what aspect of the human experience at work would you say right now it's like way underrated, but in about 5 years from now, it will be like highly valuable?
I'm gonna have to sit with this for a second. Let me think about it. I guess what I would say is an underrated part of the human experience are is honestly the hearing from people about what is complicating them feeling like they're getting their work done in the most optimal fashion right now, right? Like, how many times have you been in conversation with a colleague and it's like, yeah, I know that this is the process, but honestly, it could be so much faster if we just did this.
Yes.
And I think what that ties to, honestly, is the structure of organizations and hierarchies and departments. You know, I've said this before, I'm not the first person to say this, I know that, but our kind of department and hierarchical structures are built on a model that was put in place right around World War II. And it was the idea of this department works on the mold, this department prints the mold, this department puts it together, right? And so it was just very like contained within your department, and then an organization was a collection of these departments.
Yeah.
For years now, work has been much more fluid than that, yet we still maintained these more rigid structures. And then we wonder why some people are challenged to think about their role broader. And so I think within 5 years, what we're going to see are much flatter organizations. Whether or not that means less people, I don't know. But at the end of the day, I think what it means is people are not afraid to come and collaborate with me because I have a C in my title. Right? Whether titles go away or they evolve or they change, let's see and let's figure this out together. But I think it's more about how do you create that flat organization that so many startups loved. And if you talk to people who were there at the beginning, they're like, used to be able to get 20 people in a room and hash it out, right? And so it's getting back to how do you have this feeling of, if I identify a challenge and I think it can be done better, I feel free to go have the conversations I need to go and change that.
Right.
Or if I'm the type of person who comes from a culture or who is more introverted, I feel free to ask the questions that then allow me to get the permission that I need to act first.
Yeah.
And so that's where I think you're going to get the flatter organization where you don't have to worry about, am I missing this one critical conversation that's happening at this level that I may never hear, because it's going to feel like that across the organization.
The thing about flattening organizations, I'm glad you mentioned that, is because recently, obviously, we have the Coinbase layoffs, and CEO Brian Armstrong, he mentioned that, you know, he's working towards a flat organization. And one of the things he said is, you know, we'll have leaner teams, management is not going to be the same anymore. And when we think about flattening layers, it often has a negative connotation, as in, you know, we're removing layers of management and all of that. And we think about, wow, you know, they're losing their jobs. But this is actually the first time we're seeing it in a positive light, in a sense. Self-flattening actually means everyone gets closer to the problem and gets closer to the solution together, as opposed to having all these hierarchies and kind of operating in silos. Everyone can work more closely together. I think that's a positive thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it ties back to humility and leadership.
Yeah.
I tell my leadership team all the time that I'm not here to do their jobs and replace them.
Yeah.
I'm here because I can connect people and capabilities to the right challenges and problems and to other people. Right? And so I need them to know what they know better than I do.
Of course.
So that they can get close to the right problems and then help to surface what are the potential right solutions. And then for me to make sure that we're pressure testing these things in the right way so that we can iterate and improve. Right? And I think that when you think of a flatter organization, I think of it less as removing management layers so much as I think of it as leaders gaining back that capacity for humility and actually actioning this idea of the collective genius.
For sure, for sure. Thank you so much for your time today, KeyAnna. I know you've obviously got a hectic schedule, but we will see you in the next interview for Work 2.0, the podcast.